Hello and welcome to the next phase of Crap, This Is My Life. Today I have to actually take off the front end of my Jeep so that I can put the rebuilt surrogate front end on my Jeep. As you can see, it's a lovely day. Let's go. Okay, so this is my rebuilt Dana 35 axle assembly. It has all new bearings and races and seals. The original gears were still really good. In fact, they look new, so they're still in there. The coil spring pillars were rusted out, so I had to weld new ones on. That was interesting. I've never welded before. Not pretty, but it's not going anywhere. And I have to take this and put it on here. My current one has bad pinion bearings. I've taken the front drive shaft off, which made it stop whining, but it really didn't fix anything. So I'm going to have to start by taking off the brake caliper, rotor, and then unbolting the wheel hub. There's 3 bolts in the back, and then the wheel hub and the axle will pull out. I'm also going to be replacing the tie rod ends and ball joints while I have all this apart, because I have new ones and the new surrogate axle assembly is all clean. I have new, that's the coil spring insulator. Those are all crusty and crappy. I'm going to be replacing those. So basically, I have to take all of this off. I'm going to use the transmission jack to lower it down without killing myself, and then the same transmission jack to raise the new one back up. No idea how long this is going to take. Haven't done that before. Should be interesting. Okay, that came apart fairly easy, mostly because I've had it apart recently. And when I put it back together, I put anti-seize on the bolts. So, I have the knuckle off. Obviously the hub and axle have been pulled out. The brake caliper, rotor. I have the brake caliper tied up back here. It's actually a metal panel. Normally I tie that to the spring, but since the spring is going to come out, I had to wait until I disconnected all of the various. There's a sensor line for the ABS, and there's the brake line that goes to the caliper, and that was attached back there, and this clip went on here, and all that had to come off, and then I was able to take that, move it back there safely, and hang it up out of the way. So at this point, I'm going to compress the spring with a spring compressor and get that out of there. And then I think for the moment I'm going to leave that attached, and this back here attached. And then go take apart the other side. Fun, fun, fun. Okay, this should be interesting. I haven't used one of these before. This is a Mcpherson Strut compressor. I'm going to use this to compress my spring. These go over one of the coils of the spring, and then it actually has a safety pin that goes through there. And if this will focus, there's a check ball that actually snaps in so that this can't pop off and hit you in the face, which would really hurt. So hopefully that will be a safe and efficient way of getting the springs off the front. And all you need is a few simple tools, or a whole lot of tools. Okay, I have both sides torn apart. I have all of the nuts off of the bolts that are holding the axle on. I have left the bolts in for the moment. I'm going to get my transmission jack out, put it under there, make sure everything is secure, and then start tapping the bolts out. hopefully I'll be able to just lower it and pull it out on the jack. Well, it did not go quietly into that gentle good night, but it went. That actually wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. I kept waiting to run into some horrible thing I hadn't thought about, and fortunately that didn't happen. So now I just have to reverse the process and not screw it up. Day 3. It's actually much nicer today. I don't need a coat. Snow's melting, sun's out, driveway's dry. Much more pleasant. I have the new axle on, and I actually thought that would be the hard part. It turned out to be really easy. I used 2 jacks, a transmission jack under the differential and a regular jack under the other end. And those made life much, much easier. They're both on wheels. The transmission jack will roll sideways or straight. That one obviously only goes straight. But that was fine. It was surprisingly easy to get the bolt holes lined up. I don't have any of the nuts tightened yet, but it's bolted in, it's hanging on its own power. You can hear my neighbor, who doesn't maintain his vehicle ever. What I didn't expect was the tie rods being a giant problem. They are completely frozen in there. So I've beat on them a little bit. I soaked them with penetrating oil, and hopefully I'll be able to get those off. I was able to bring this bar inside. I don't know exactly what this bar is called. It's the one with the steering dampener on it. I have a new one of those coming as well. I have no idea how old that is or how good it is, but same thing. Tie rods on both ends, completely rusted in there. So I took a cold chisel and whacked that in both directions and soaked it with penetrating oil. And later I think I'm going to put that in a vise, put a pipe wrench on that, and hope I can get it to turn. If I can get it to move, I should be good. Worst case, I'll get a torch out and heat the thing up. I hate doing that for 2 reasons. 1, it never really seems to help all that much, and 2, it takes all the annealing out of your metal, and then it tends to rust faster. And while I don't care at all about this because I'm replacing it, I want to keep that. And not to be forgotten, I also have to put the steering knuckles back on, the springs back in, the axles and wheel bearings and brakes. I think before I put the knuckles in, I'm going to clean them up with a wire brush and paint them with rust encapsulator. I'm not worried about them rusting too much since they're a giant cast block, but here, if I'm doing this, I might as well do it all. Okay, when I took the ball joints out of the surrogate axle, they look like this. They were rusted in there, they were not coming out. I had to cut them off, grind them down, drill holes in them until they look like Swiss cheese, and then take a cold chisel and hammer out the remaining pieces. I mistakenly thought that it would be easier to put the new ones in. It still sucked. They're in. I have an SUV ball joint press kit, and even with that and the longest breaker bar I could find, pretty sure I destroyed my shoulder putting those in. But now that they are in, I don't think they're ever coming out again. Hello, and welcome back to the project that never ends. My parents got me an early Christmas present, I think mostly out of pity. They got me a portable garage to put around my Jeep. It's actually way better than laying on the cement. It's not perfect, you know, the snow still blows in underneath it, but overall it cuts down on the wind and a little bit of heat stays in. I'm down to resealing my differential. I had to open it up to try and figure out why the axle on the passenger side wouldn't go in all the way. Turns out my last axle was a Verilok axle, and The orbital planetary gears are centered on this one. This is a standard or open differential. The Verilok is off to the right because it has room for the locking mechanisms. So I had to order different axles. Fortunately, they were only $44 each. But yeah, got the new tie rods on. That was as much fun as getting the ball joints on. Pretty much everything in this project's been fun. It's kind of hard to see it back there, but there's a new steering dampener, which is basically a shock absorber that goes on the tie rod, so when you hit a bump it doesn't yank your arm around. So yeah, I'm about to seal that cover up, close it up, and then later today I will fill it with fluid. The only other things I have left are reattaching the shocks. I have to attach the end of this bar, which I can't do right now because this is too low. I'm going to jack it up, and as it goes up, that will line up with the hole. That's really heavy. So yeah, even when I'm not working out in the cold, this little magnetic pan I'm in love with. It has kept me from losing cotter pins in the snow or on my driveway, and keeping bits of metal from ending up in my tire. Since this project has been ongoing and I need the same tools over and over, I decided to put them in one of the boxes, and then I just drag the box in and out with me as I go from day to day on the endless project that I really wish was done in the summer, because now we're getting 6 inches of snow and 4-wheel drive would be sweet. And the fun just keeps on coming. If you get a chance someday when it's not this cold and horrible, jack up your vehicle, climb around under it, and look at things. Seriously. That is one of the control arms that hooks to the new axle I put on. It's not going to fall off tomorrow, but it's not good. It's not good. Yeah. Okay. So I have re-cleaned the mating surfaces. It's amazing how quickly they developed a layer of surface rust, even in the winter. There's zero humidity right now, and this is under the car. It can't get rained on. The cover was on it, even though the seal was broken. It's still rusted. Gotta love nature. So now I'm going to put Permatex number 1 on it. This will handle up to 400 degrees. It's resistant to gasoline and oil and all kinds of stuff. The original gasket sealer that came with this was from Felpro, and it was a silicone sealer, and that's just fine. It won't stand up to gasoline, but I'm not going to put gasoline in the differential, so it doesn't really matter. So this is probably overkill, but I had it on hand, and that's a lot easier than trying to drive somewhere when you got no wheels.
Lay on the ground under your Jeep so you can freeze your nads off.
I don't know if it's even possible to do this and make it look good, but I wanted to make sure that every screw hole and every surface was going to have some Permatex on it. Now the directions say you're supposed to let it air dry for a few minutes until it's tacky. It's really cold out here, and this stuff is like a thick paste. So even though there's plenty of light, I have this quartz light which kicks out a lot of heat, and trying to warm the differential up because I'd like this stuff to cure before Christmas if possible. It's day number, I have no idea. I ran out of daylight yesterday, and I believe today's actually the day. I know I've been saying this to myself for a month. Today's actually the day I'll be done with this. Here's where we are. Almost everything is back together. I am about to put fluid in the differential. It takes 75-140. I did buy the friction modifier at the dealership. However, it turns out that for the standard open differential you don't need it. I needed it for my Verilok differential that I took off before I realized they were different and had to buy new axles. We have all new tie rods. We have new coil spring insulators, which are basically rubber things on the top and the bottom. I have greased all of the zerts on all of the tie rods. We of course have new axles. We have a new track bar. That's that bar coming down on an angle, also called a stabilizer bar. And one of the last things I'm going to have to do, it's hard to do this and hold the phone. Okay, you can kind of see the hole in the axle mount and the hole in the track bar. They're about an inch away from each other, which means you can't put a bolt through it. Now the other end mounts to the frame, and what this does is it keeps the axle centered under the Jeep. Now I've been talking to the guys in the forum, and some of them use a winch or come along to pull the two together. Other people said, no, just have somebody get in it and turn the steering wheel while you watch it, and it will line up. And they said, I will be amazed at how easy it is. I haven't seen anything on this project actually turn out easy, so if that happens, I'll dance a jig. Back there, that's the front drive shaft. 6 bolts going each end. That's relatively easy to put on, and I rebuilt both ends of that last winter. I forgot the actual name for that. I want to say double cardigan, but I'm not sure that's correct. Each end has a constant velocity joint instead of a U-joint. Why they decided to do that, I'm not sure. But one of them, you know, clunked around and eventually seized up, just like constant velocity joints do on your axles. And I had to rebuild it. So, I'm going to put in the fluid, put on the axle, try to get that bolt in. And then I'll be done. There's nowhere better than on a cold cement driveway in the middle of winter. But I have the front differential filled with fluid, I have the front tires on, and I have the drive shaft almost completely on. I have that end lined up and a couple bolts in it, and I need to finish putting the rest of the bolts in that. That end is done. Those have all been torqued. So hopefully I can get out from under this Jeep soon. Well, it was a long and painful process, but I just took her out for her maiden voyage on the expressway around town. As far as I can tell, she's perfect. I win.